mic 12. This is mic 12.
Okay, share screen.
Turn off your microphone.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Rosenthal. I was just letting her turn that off.
Oh,
I move that the Board of Trustees non-renew the term employment contract of Barbara Perkins at the end of the 2020-2021 school year and authorize the superintendent to provide notice of the board's actions.
Second.
we have a second, and do we have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, we have 6. All those not in favor? Guess there's nobody here, so that motion passes 6-0. Do we have another motion?
Yes, Mr. Rosenthal, I move that the Board of Trustees appoint Courtney Clark to the position of Principal of Lake Olympia Middle School.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 6-0. I do not see Mrs. Williams on, just making sure. Gary, can you confirm that Danetta is not with us yet? Okay, thank you. Do we have another motion?
Yes, we do. I move that the Board of Trustees appoint Veronica Roberson to the position of Principal of Mission Bend Elementary School.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please vote with your hands. Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Okay, that concludes our closed session action items. And so for the rest of the evening, we are here for our board team building, collaboration, and planning. And so I am extremely happy this evening that we have Dr. Kathy Mintzberg. This is something I've been hoping that would have happened a while back, but here we are, and it's great timing because now we have 5 new board members. And so Kathy and Mr. Rice and I have a history. And so actually, before I go there, let me just say this. So this is, I'm extremely thankful that you all are here tonight. I am hoping that Danetta will join us soon. But this is really critical. And before I go on, I just want to let you know that just in case, I sound like I'm spaced out a little bit, I probably actually shouldn't be here right now, but this is too important to have postponed or for me not to be here. So just so you all know, my mother is in the hospital at Memorial Southwest, and she's not going to make it much longer. So I'm in a different kind of zone right now, so just please excuse me and bear with me. And so I'm extremely excited that Kathy is here. As I said, we have a history. And for my opening remarks, before I turn it over to Kathy, I want to say this, is that in 2012, we basically had 5 new board members. And we were not a team. We were a group of 7 people, all kind of going their own way, doing their own thing. And I was considered, and I considered myself an activist. I was a naysayer. I was so many things that new board members typically are. And if you all read that epilogue, I don't know if did everybody have a chance to read the story? So I read it for the first time yesterday afternoon. And a couple things brought a smile to my face. Some of the stories. But all that stuff really did happen. And it happened through working with Kathy Mintzberg. We were like just a ragtag team. Okay, as I said, everybody going their own way. There was no foundation. There was nothing. I will tell you that there was animosity between board members. There was this old versus new. Okay, we didn't like gel and all get along and all going out to dinner together. It wasn't like that. Okay, and there was no trust or very little trust toward the administration, especially from the 5 new board members that were on that part of that team. The whole team of 8 concept, okay? I actually saw on my hard drive before I went away on vacation recently, I was backing stuff up, and I saw an article that I never sent to the newspaper, but I had written it. And I didn't go back and read what I wrote, but I saw the title. And it said, "A Team of 8 Ain't So Great." And I wrote that in 2010, 2011, okay, right after probably Jim Babb got, the late Jim Babb and my friend got elected to the school board. So I didn't buy into any of that stuff, okay? And Charles reminded me when Charles Deanna had a conversation the other day, and he says, "I remember what you said to me." Because I said to him, "I don't buy into this team of 8 stuff." He goes, apparently I said, "I'm your boss." And so I don't remember saying that, but if he said I said that, I probably did. There's probably a lot of things I said way back then. So my point is that we're not that different from where we started back in 2012, okay? We're really not. We need to learn as a board. We need to come up with our own initiatives, our own passions, and what we want to see with this district. And I believe that we can do that. And I believe we need help. And so with that, I don't know, Jim, if you want to say anything, but.
Well, I'll say we actually have two new trustees. Not to correct you, but we have two new trustees, and we have 3 trustees who've served for 7 months.
And so, I didn't mean to,
I'll just get that in there. But I'm going to just say a couple words about Kathy, because she used to be on the Houston Independent School District Board of Trustees, along with Don McAdams and along with Rod Page. And she has a lot of good stories to tell about that. And one in particular is very interesting because Dr. Rod Page was a trustee with them, and one day they decided to make him the superintendent. And the minute he became the superintendent, their relationship changed quite a bit. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But I don't want to eat into Kathy's time, but she worked with us for 18 months and really helped us a lot. So I'll just stop there.
Kathy, it's all yours. Yes. Yes.
We're trying to do eye motions. They don't quite need to say in this place. Well, thank you for the very kind words. I really do appreciate it. You know that phrase, where there's a will, there's a way, and you guys supplied the will. And without a board that wants to be effective, it doesn't matter who stands at the front of the room. Thank you. Here, I'm going to stand up most of the time. So I want to congratulate you and your former team members for understanding that it's the group. The board has the power, not each individual. And as a powerful group, you can move mountains slowly, which is the unfortunate part. It's not nearly as fast as I would have liked when I was a board member, but you can make a huge difference. And I served for 14 years, and the first 8 were a total waste. We went to football games, cut ribbons, went to school plays, got nothing done for kids. And finally, we kind of drew a line in the sand and said, we're not going to do that anymore. I sat next to a guy who'd been on the board for 12 years, and he turned to me in a board meeting one day, and he said, his back's to the audience, and he looks right at me, and he says, I've been here for 12 years. An entire generation of children have gone through the school system, and I have not made a difference. And that was hugely impactful for me to say, I'm not going to sit here and just warm a seat for all these years. So after my first 8 years, we kind of got down to business and started to say, we're going to push the district in the direction that the community wants. And it's going to be known. And so there's going to be cohesion through the district. This is what we're doing. So a teacher will know what we're doing. A custodian will know what we're doing. And it was a terrific experience. It was the best and the worst. We almost went to jail. It was just a real fun time. So you may have your own stories years from now. Appreciate this moment in history that you are about to embark on, where, you know, Andy Warhol said you get 15 minutes of fame, and this is it. So, you know, deciding what you're going to do as a team and make it happen is incredibly powerful. And to start that, one of the things that I asked you to do was bring an artifact. And if for any reason you forgot or didn't bring it, tell me what you would have brought. But a thing that helps us get to know you a little better as a person. Doesn't have to have anything to do with education. It's just, I did this with a board in Denver, and one person brought a can of peas. You know, like, what do peas have? Well, it turns out her family has owned a pea farm forever, and she had a lot of identity in the experiences of migrant workers and being a farmer's child. So whatever it is, and we'll take a volunteer, see who likes to go first. Who'd like to pony up what they brought? Jim, thank you for being the guinea pig.
Okay, I have brought a carved wooden buffalo, and this is my totem. This is from a class I took in Boy Scouts for adult leaders called Wood Badge. And in Wood Badge, everybody's assigned to a patrol that has the name of an animal. I wanted to be on, somehow I got on the Buffalo Patrol, and I really like that. So it's a symbol, this is a symbol to the Native Americans of life, because they relied upon the buffalo. They saw it as a nurturing creature for their people, and I wanted to be that. So I was in Boy Scouts for a long time as an adult leader, all the way from first grade with my kids through when they were in Boy Scouts. And we went on, when I was in Boy Scouts, I went on every single camp out for 8 years in a row.
Wow.
Monthly camp outs, winter camp, summer camp, camporees, and then I did Wood Badge at the end of my service, which was kind of a waste. Your story reminded me of that, how much more effective I would have been if I had done it at the beginning of my 8-year tenure as an adult scout leader, as a scouter. That's what you call an adult scout leader, a scouter, as opposed to a scouts. And so when you're going camping, you're working all week, you're meeting at the church on Friday night, loading up the trailer, loading up the boys. I pull the trailer, make sure that trailer's loaded correctly or it won't pull right. I didn't know how to set up a tent in the daylight because we always got there at dark and set them up in the dark. And I learned that I was not going to be a buddy of the boys. I'm not their buddy. I'm an adult mentor, because adult mentors have to call the boys out when they need to keep them safe. And they'll do that for an adult mentor before they'll do it for a buddy. That's why you're not a buddy. So have a lot of great scouting stories, experiences. We used to say, you can't make this stuff up. Very entertaining. And I'll stop there and let someone else go.
Great, thanks, Jim. And let's take about 2 minutes each. You don't have to feel pressure to, explain everything, but tell me something about what this artifact, this thing means to you. Who'd like to go next?
Not everybody at once. Kristen, I see something there.
All right, I'll go.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I brought this rock, and this rock my husband brought back to our family. He always, every time he goes out of town, he always brings something back. And it's usually very sentimental. In this case, this came from our deer lease, and it's special to me because, one, we collect rocks from various places because we have a strong appreciation and connection with the earth. One, the color, and it's also, this one is from Texas, and if everybody hasn't figured it out, I'm very proud to be a Texan, and I love our state. So this coming from and having a little piece of Texas in the hill country for me is huge. And then the vibrant colors that are naturally in it, I think that there's beauty throughout the world, and finding the beauty that's in front of you is very important, and it's something we talk to our kids about. It reminds me of hunting and fishing and being together as a family in the quiet and being able to think. And then, most importantly, a rock, and rocks are important to me because I believe a home built on a solid foundation cannot easily fall. And so when you have your priorities straight and your beliefs, and you know where you want to go and how you want to build and where, and you take the time to build that foundation, you will not easily be broken. And so it's very sentimental and my artifact.
Well, thank you. You and Jim both have an outdoor sort of a grounding in what's happening.
I know. I was listening to him, and I'm like, "Hey, we could all go camping."
That's
in
right.
my head. Like,
But
it'd be
one was
fun.
set up in the light.
Or glamping.
Who else?
Come on, let's have somebody from this side.
Yes.
Come on.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Shirley. Let's see. Well, I was going to look for something, and then it's right there on my arm, so I'm going to take it off. This is a charm bracelet, and what is so special about this is everything on it has to do with education. It was given to me in my second year as principal of Bush High School by my administrative team, and I'm looking for it started with one charm, and the charm is a fleur-de-lis. And even though it means saints, the reason was leadership. It stands for leadership. And it was very special. I really don't wear a lot of jewelry, but I'll have this on, and I do a lot of different things with it. And our team in our second year at Bush, we did a lot in our very first team, our first year. That first year, we were on the edge of A-Leaf, ISD, and they had us on speed call behind the kids going back and forth. I'll save some of the stories, but it was a really, really rough year. And we grew, and so in coming into the second year, and they shared with me about my leadership, and I was able to hire all of them, and it was just wonderful. Well, from there, it grew. And I have the word believe, and I have that on here twice. My motto is believe in the possibilities, because all things are possible if we believe. And so when the little lady who gave it to me, she said, "Oh, you already have it." I said, "I need more." So we put it on there. Then I have this high heel that looks really I always wear high heels. And the thing about the heel, at a high school, yes, I did. And I always had high heels. And the joke was that they could tell my mood by the way that my heels clicked on the floor. So I have two of those, so I'll keep whatever they give me. And then, of course, I have the house, the schoolhouse, and what have you. But then I have my mascots. And this came every time I got to another school, they gave me a mascot. So the one that I truly treasure, and I know I'm on, I love everybody, but of course is my Bronco, my Bush Broncos. I have a hawk for Krista McCullough, and I have an eagle for Willow Ridge High School, Willow Ridge Eagles, Krista McCullough Hawks, and I have my buffalo for Marshall High School, and I was at Wheatley High School for 5 years, and I have my paw print. Then from there, I'm gonna leave the one that's really, really special, the second one. I graduated from Texas A&M with my doctorate, and in that little section, I turned 50, and my husband gave me my 50 and my diploma as well as my Texas A&M. And there's my ring. There we go. Here you go. And this last one that I have here, I love pink. My nail's messed up today. I love pink, and that's from my daughter, Chelsea. And she said, "You need it pink and on your chain." And so she did that. And it's very, very special to me when there are many times when I'm wearing it, I'll turn it over, and when I'm writing, and I may be having some issues, believe will show. And it just consistently reminds me that as long as we believe, all will be all right. Thank you.
Well, now you've inspired me to get out my old charm bracelet and look at it again. Thank you. Thank you. Who else?
Angie?
Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest. I did not realize that we were streaming, and I brought something very, very personal. And So growing up, my dad always had a Timex with a flex band. And he had to wear a flex band and a clip-on tie because he worked in a plant building communication devices. And if you got, things stuck, it had to come off of you, so it didn't, injure you. And so I was always just really fascinated by my dad's Timex, and growing up, I don't know if you're, they take a licking but keep on ticking, right? Yeah. But the reason I brought it is because I don't know if you can see it, but can you see the face?
Yeah.
I don't want to pass it around. And so the time says 7:09. And that's the moment my father was killed by a drunken driver. And I bring this because it's what I learned from my dad growing up is that time is precious and time is not limitless. You don't have all the time in the world. And I even teach my daughter that we are so lucky to be on this earth. And so the little bit of time that we are here, we have to make the most of it. Because we're not here eternally. We're here for a blink of an eye. And as you were telling me about the gentleman that was on your school board and said, I have been here for 12 years and I have not made a difference in the life of children. My parents instilled in me, we didn't have a lot of money, but they did teach me the value of time. You work hard and you play hard and you know how to separate the two. And I think that's really important in our work, in our volunteerism, that we balance what we do on behalf of the children, but also on behalf of our family. And so, it's just, people that know me, I'm not a lollygagger. I do not like to dilly-dally. That's not in my repertoire. But, I wanted everybody to understand, my perception of time. And I don't want to be that board member that says I've been on the board. Well, I won't be on the board for 12 years, but
People say that, but then.
Well, I just really value time.
You want to look back at the time you did spend.
Yeah.
Feel the value.
Yeah, in all aspects of my life, and I'm sorry about your mom, and so anyway.
Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks. It hit home. I had the same feeling that we were just spinning our wheels, but I didn't know how to be productive. So that's part of why we've gathered tonight, is to figure out how does this group really make a difference versus just put in some time. Judy.
Yes. So I brought this. Can you? So I found this in an antique market in Paris. So there's this little story. In old days, Louis XIV. So the ladies, when the only time they can get attention, if you're not royal family, is when you go to a church. And then, so there's a story. So the ladies try to get attention, from some important person. They will go to, later on they found out that lady, it's a witch, but they go to this particular person to get a drop of lucky liquid. And then they're going to put it in their handkerchief. And then they go to the church and try to get some lucky, day. So later on, they make this. They made a little. So the lady later on, they made a small bottle in a shape of teardrop, and so they can hide it in their handkerchief. So later on, they made this beautiful kitchen. So people carry this around to bring luck. So it called bouteille de chance. So it's a bottle of luck. So the reason I brought this because I'm a person, I like simple stuff. I like Shirley, I don't like jewelry, but I do like staff you represent something I like, history. I love it. And so I found this in the antique market. And then the reason I brought here, I feel we can all use some luck to, we have a tough year coming up. I think I hope we can all work together. And so I'm going to pass this around, and then just, hopefully it will bring us. I'll take good luck. Yes, some special luck for us. Thank you.
You're actually right. There's skill, and there's always an element of luck. You just happen to get the right people this election. Part of that's just luck, that you get the right people who all care about the kids and want to get things done versus people who, I actually, trained a board member, and I said, so why did you run for the board? And she said, because I was bored. Well, that's not quite the heart you want to see when people talk about why they ran. So, Dave, did you bring us anything?
Oh, you want to go?
Sure.
Deanna?
Yes, I'll go next. I brought, I'm a runner, and I really enjoy exercising, but I haven't always run. But in 2016, I was going through a lot of transition in my personal life, and at that time, I felt like it was really important for me to find an outlet, a time where I could disconnect. And so running just became something that I enjoyed doing. I could put on my headphones. I could go out for a run. I did my best thinking during that time. I was able to engage in self-care and really exercise. And when I was done, I felt really, really energized. And the year, so 2016 really represented a year of transition in my life. And so I turned 50, and my daughter had recently graduated from high school. I got divorced. I had been married for 22 years, and I got divorced. And so it was a new time and a new transition in my life. And so I set a goal as I started running that I wanted to run my first marathon before my year of 50 ended. So I turned 50 in 2016 as well. And so I ran a half marathon in February of the year before. And then of February of 2016. And then right before I turned 51 in February of 2017, like 4 days before my birthday, I ran a full marathon. So I ran a half marathon the year before when I turned 50, and before I turned 51, I ran a full marathon. And it really was just it was a time of transition for me. I set goals. I just engaged in a lot of self-care. I disciplined myself. And when I looked back a year later, I was in a very different place than where I started. By the time I ran my marathon, I had been part of Fort Bend ISD for about 9 months, almost a full year. So I had transitioned moving back to Fort Bend ISD. I felt like I was coming back home. And so it was a great time, as I said, of transition. And so I believe that when you're focused, when you set some goals, and when you allow yourself to engage in a transition that's healthy, you can get to the other side and be much better for it. And as I think about where we are as a school district, we're in a great place. We're in a state of transition, but I do have a firm belief that if we set some goals, if we're very focused and we're very intentional about our work in the next few months, that we can transition successfully and take our school district to the next level. So
I totally agree with you on the focus. I mean, it's something, a lot of people bring passion to this work. That's not enough. It's shocking. It has to be focused with whatever the power, the levers are to make change. And you were able to control all of those in your life. This is harder for the group to do that, but it pays off.
Okay. So I'm actually somebody who collects a lot of family items and whatnot, but just because of what's going on in my life right now, I wasn't I didn't want to go kind of rummaging for that. So I know one time I had two uncles on Omaha Beach on the morning of June 6th, and they both miraculously made it into France. And I have from one of my uncles, I have his Purple Heart, and I've have watches and things like that. And Angie, I'm very sorry to hear your story about your father. So tonight I just kind of took a screenshot.
Thanks for sharing. You know, we should all be so loved. And the remarks you made about your dad, and that's kind of the ultimate honor, that somebody remembers you all these years later and speaks so fondly of what you learned from someone. So you all want to be that person for your family, for your community, and it's hard sometimes to figure out, what am I demonstrating? What am I role modeling? And that's why this group could be very supportive of each other, because people actually don't know you. I mean, it's a big district, and some people voted for you, but you're just not well known, and school board members are really low on the name ID. So what the district does is really the impression that you leave. And you want the district to do some amazing things. So that's part of why we're here today, to say, okay, we want a role model, but we have to do it as a group, and that is really, really hard. You have been thrown together. You didn't choose to be together. This is not like courtship where you go through and explore somebody and decide if you want to spend the rest of your life with them. You just got tapped and okay, poof, now you people all have to go make magic together. So we're going to talk about, and hopefully this won't be the end of our conversation, about how do you make that magic together. We call it team building and collaboration. We don't do trust falls, and we don't climb walls together, and we don't sing Kumbaya. We talk about the work, and you build trust with each other around the work. And shockingly, everybody thinks the work is the board meeting with agenda items. That is actually a very low on the totem pole of the work. The work that you have been hired to do is way up here, the 50,000-foot level. And the community puts pressure on you constantly to talk about something way down here in the weeds. And I remember Bob Lanier. He was a mayor in Houston. And when he got elected, he was a business person, had no experience like this. He called Henry Cisneros, whom he considered to be one of the best mayors, and he said, Henry, I want to be a great mayor. How do I do that? And Henry said, well, if you want to know, I'll tell you. He said, my first year as mayor, I went everywhere. I touched everybody. I had an opinion on absolutely everything, and I got nothing done. My second year, I picked 3 things, and I got them all done. And think about it. If you're here 8 years, think 3 things a year, 3 big things a year is a lot of things that might be very important to a school system. And so Bob Lanier did that, and sure enough, he made a huge difference. He transformed downtown. He put sidewalks all across neighborhoods because it was neighborhoods to standards. He brought various groups, ethnic groups, community groups. That was his goal, to connect people. And he was very effective at the 3 things that he wanted to get done. If you want to talk to him about transit, wouldn't even listen to you. So a few things I wish he had dealt with, but you can only do so much. And the same for a school. We play this game, and we could do it, but what I do is I flash some names of animals that are in the zoo up there. And everybody gets to stare at it for 5 seconds, and then I take it away, and then you write down what you saw. And the first one has, I think it has 3 animals. Everybody gets 100%. They remember those 3. Great. And then we do it again, and I put 8 animals up there and turn it off, and everybody gets about 3 to 5, maybe some 6s in there. Nobody gets 8. And then I put 35. And suddenly, nobody can remember anything. And that's what we do to superintendents. We say, I have a good idea. Do this, do that, do this, do that. And so superintendents either pull their hair out or they cherry pick from the list and work on the things that they're passionate about, and you're really not in the driver's seat. So the secret is, back to Deanna's point, it's about focus. When you focus the administration on something, it actually gets accomplished. If you gave the superintendent, your new superintendent, one thing to do next year, one thing, what do you think the chances are that that person could get one possible thing, not an impossible, but a possible thing? What are the chances? Like 100%. Yeah. And everything you add on pulls focus away. So if you give them 3 things or 4 things, chances are you'll get it done. But Covey says if you give them 7, they'll get 3 done. So you lose power when the superintendent starts making decisions of which of your edicts, your directions to follow. So when you give them 1, there is no loss of power in the board's agenda setting. So let's talk a little bit about teams. Having been on a board for 14 years, and I used to have all dark hair, and this is a product of serving on a school board, it was the best experience of my life and the worst. I mean, it's all the same thing. So let's see if, well, it worked a minute ago. For some reason, the share screen is not getting me there, I think. So I gave it to you in hard copy, so you can look at it. We're going to talk about teams. We're going to talk about collaboration. We're going to talk about focus. We're going to talk about dysfunctional teams. And we're going to talk about the fact, thank you, that you were designed as a board to be dysfunctional. There's no reason you should function well. And we're going to talk about that. So let's talk, okay, those are the session goals. Understand the roles. You have a role. The administration has a role. Effective teams and the principles of collaboration. There are 3 reasons that being on a school board is extremely challenging. The first is that governance represents widely shared ownership, widely shared. So what happens when everybody thinks they know the answer? You get a zillion ideas, a zillion directions. The other reason it's challenging is boards are actually designed to be dysfunctional. Took a bunch of people together who don't know each other, don't necessarily have a similar direction or background or ethos or caring, and we said, okay, you people go run a school district. And then finally, that the line between management and governance is not clear. There's about 3 lines in state government that talk about what your job is and what the administration's job, and none of those are even clear. So let's go to the first one. Governance represents widely shared ownership. This is what it looked like. You all, as I said, came from all sorts of different backgrounds. You've had different experiences. This is what you look like when you come on a board. You're all over the place. You've got, you know, you're pulling in this direction. Somebody else is pulling in the exact opposite direction. All of that, as you can imagine, if we were playing tug of war, which people in my office outlawed and said I couldn't do a tug of war because I thought it would be really effective if we had everybody pulling and pushing in different directions. You clearly never move. You just kind of get stuck. So this is your community. They're in the exact same boat. I mean, think of all the stakeholders, the people who actually really care about what we're doing here. Tell me what taxpayers want out of the school system. Low taxes. And usually they really would like to have a very high education level for like 0 money, you know, just do both. What do parents want out of the school system? They want a safe school. They want the kid to come home in the same condition you sent him to school. What else do pardon? They want fabulous schools. They give their kid a great education. Right. What does the legislature want out of you guys?
Run the school district.
they have some very strong feelings about what they think you should be able to do and not do. And they have the power to actually do something about that. But very often they would like you to produce high-quality students for very low tax dollars. That would make them feel real happy, along with the many other things they want to play with. What does the business community want out of you? Yeah, they would like somebody who can actually calculate, write, not have to retrain when they get them. And by the way, they'd like that for as little money as humanly possible, too. So let's say the federal government, what does the federal government want out of local school systems? Might want control, but what do they want when they think about control? They also want those educated kids for as little money as humanly possible. And they'd also like us to fix some of the societal problems that they see, or we see. You know, they're concerned about low-income kids and whether or not they're going to be useful in a competitive market going forward. What do civil rights organizations want out of you? They're very concerned about particular groups and how they're treated, and are they able to access, do they have the opportunity to take advantage of the education in front of them? What do teachers want out of the system? Understanding parents. Support. They want support. So they want you to spend as much money as humanly possible for salaries and benefits. And they'd also like a boss that cares and is inspirational and provides support. And they'd like parents who are supportive and get off their back about stuff and stay out of trying to micromanage in the school. What do administrators want? Yeah, they'd like everybody in the school to do their job, including the parents and the kids, because the kids have a job there, and they'd like not to be inundated by central office or the legislature or parents. You know, let us go over here and do our job and do a good job over there. You know, what do students want out of the system? Shirley, what do students want? You've been in front of a lot of students.
Students want caring, they want caring adults, they want great teachers, they want a home away from home.
Mm-hmm.
They want to have fun. They want to have fun learning.
Yeah. And caring teachers give them that sense of fun. They're not so concerned about money. They're not so concerned about, you know, these issues that bounce around the state legislatures. For them, this is very personal. So they wanted to work for them and what they need. So as you can see, all these people that we talked about have a lot of passion around education. They're willing to go to the mat. They really believe strongly many of these things and are willing to punish you all or reward you all for whether or not you're on their agenda or not. So this provides a huge amount of tension in this fishbowl. And by the way, there's tons of press, and what does the press want out of you?
They want to make the ratings.
Exactly. They need this to be interesting so that they can report on it. And interesting is, you know, it's an old Confucian curse. May you live in interesting times. So let's talk about the second challenge. Second challenge about you being designed for dysfunction. Consider the board of directors of a large corporation. I'll pick on ExxonMobil, just as an example. ExxonMobil has a CEO, and then they have a board of directors that represents stockholders. So you're supposed to protect stock value, deliver value to stockholders. So what is the thing that you ask the CEO to do every day?
Increase profits.
Make money. Exactly. Every day that the board meets, they say, so what's our bottom line look like? How are we doing? What's the projection? They're not asking about the whales. They're not asking about, how the airline industry's doing. They're not asking about whether kids are learning. They have that focus. And so the CEO is highly focused on the issue because their reward system from stockholders is very much focused on that. And so they have a giant agreement on what the CEO ought to be working on. And they pay somebody $40 million a year to make more money. Now, think about a superintendent. All the things we ask a superintendent to do: win over community affection, make sure every child's learning, provide opportunities for kids way outside of the classroom. I mean, think about keep the tax rate low, make sure the buildings are maintained at hospital level with no new money. I mean, it's a huge collection compared to what the president of a major organization like Exxon has to focus on. Completely different, and you guys get to do it in a fishbowl. The press is looking at you every minute, and if not, some blogger or some parent is sharing information. So the exposure, the lack of focus is what superintendents deal with, and that's not what happens in business. They fuss when they have 3 issues to worry about. And we're like, oh, come on, guys, that's nothing. There's a Mark Twain quote. It says, I don't know if you've all heard it. First God made fools for practice, and then he made school board members. So we've been making fun of school boards since the 1800s. Anybody here ever seen Music Man? Okay, remember? Okay, Harold Hill's Con Man. He's going to get everybody to buy instruments that aren't going to ever arrive. And he is so good at being a con man that he takes the most disgruntled group in town and turns them into the ultimate of harmony, a barbershop quartet. And it's funny because who's the group that he turns into this ultimate of harmony? The school board. And everybody in the audience laughs because they know that's a joke. School boards never are harmonious. So we have this long-standing impression of school boards that's in everybody's brain, that they are crazy or, they can't ever agree. They're always going to be fighting. And when you agree on something, what does the community say? You're a rubber stamp. You're a rubber stamp. It's like, what? You can't win. You can't win. So you have to be focused on the right thing. And you're willing to die for the right things as a group. Then we're just we're just ignoring that stuff about, you just need to slap the superintendent around every now and then. I've been told that. Like, really? Is that what you do with your family? So, this is the wrong design for getting stuff accomplished. But this is the design we have. And so we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to make it work. And we're going to make it work by learning about how this chaotic design actually can function well. So we're going to talk about function and dysfunction. I want you to tell me, and I'm going to call on you so everybody will get a chance. I want you to tell me what a dysfunctional team looks like. I'm going to tell you what a high-functioning team looks like. For example, high-functioning team, the board is focused on a clear set of beliefs, a plan to carry them out, and regular monitoring. So what does a dysfunctional board look like in this area? They believe everything all over the wall. Right. Never, no focus, just all over, or have no beliefs. I have seen that. They're like, I don't know. What do you want to do, Mr. Superintendent, Ms. Superintendent? No plan.
That's the way it was in 2012.
Yeah, no plan. Just, you show up every day and you just do stuff.
We talked about how many miles that we had on the white fleet, stuff like that.
Right, like that changed the thing for kids. Yep. I had a board member who came into my office one day. We had little offices in HSD, about the size of that table, and said to me, "You are powerful." And I said, "Okay, I'll go with that." And she wanted to know, how do you get powerful? And I said, you focus on a couple of things. And you stay with them in educating your colleagues and making sure that you build support in the community. You just don't go out and throw a bunch of stuff up on the wall. And you have a plan. I mean, has anybody ever taken a driving vacation? Have you done that? Yeah. Okay. Remember the old days you used to call AAA and you get a map and yep. And you take the yellow marker and nobody just drives out of the driveway and says, well, we're going to New York. Anybody want to know, do we turn left or right? Everybody has a plan. And that's how you get stuff done, with a very specific plan. Monitoring. All boards are terrible at this. We spend $20 million on something, and we never check back to see if that made a difference with kids. So you have to monitor. Not everything the district does. But if you've got a big thing that you've just, everybody's bled all over the table to get this done, you got to do some follow-up and find out, did it work? And it's fair to ask that. High-functioning boards also focus on improving student achievement for all students. And what do dysfunctional boards do? They don't focus on student achievement. I worked with a board in Arkansas, and I said, the first meeting, so how many students do you have? How's student achievement? If you don't know those things, how in the heck would you ever know if you've improved it? If you don't know the baseline today. We also had a board member in Portland that every meeting, she said, on every item, what does that do for the jazz band? Because her son was in the jazz band. And that's not focusing on all kids. That's focusing on the jazz band. So you can't improve lives of all kids if all you care about is your kid's collection of kids. High-functioning boards set clear expectations for superintendent and provide constructive feedback. What does a dysfunctional board do? Deanna?
Well, maybe the expectations aren't clear. And if there's no feedback, then there's not an understanding that there's a problem or a way to continuously improve, right?
Can you imagine being a superintendent and every board meeting, 50 new ideas come on the table? Another next boarding, another 25, 40. No focus at all. So the superintendent, other than resign and go somewhere else, may pick out like, well, I really love Angie's idea. I'm going with that, and the heck with the rest. They'll never know. They don't monitor anything, and I like that idea. But, so if you want to make the superintendent do things, certain things, you have to give the direction. It has to be super clear. So at a board meeting, if there's a pop-up discussion about something, usually the board president says, now let me get this clear. I heard you say blah, blah. Is that what we're saying we want the superintendent to do? And then the direction comes back. And I think the board president's role is very important in doing that kind of focusing. Because we all just sort of pontificate at a board meeting. We feel so good. Oh, I told them, Well, nobody's going to do anything with me just telling them. It has to come back in a board item or a vision document or something.
We'd all kind of chime in, and Charles kind of took notes, and he heard, okay, I hear like 5 people kind of saying the same thing. And so that
Him checking back is super helpful. Super helpful. So if you have a superintendent who doesn't do that, look out. High-functioning boards their differences are never made in public. In the past, this board has had some bad history with that. My founder, Don McAdams, who actually founded the Center for Reform of School Systems that I now run, we were colleagues on the school board in Houston together, and he was working with an Oakland board, and they called each other obscenities in the training. And Don said, you guys are completely dysfunctional. You are not going to accomplish anything for kids. I'm never coming back. So it's amazing how normally civil people can kind of dissolve under the pressure of being on a school board. Community pressure, media pressure, we can kind of go to our bad place. So just think about if you have a difference with somebody, how do you think you guys should handle that? Two of you disagree about something. Yeah. Don't write it down, because it will be on the front page of some paper somewhere. But yes, face-to-face, and talk about it. And the same for the group. When things aren't going well, there's just nothing better than talking about it. You just have to find the legal time to do that. High-functioning board members work together to represent the whole district. They do not play interest group politics. So what does a dysfunctional board do? Yeah, you got them. Sometimes they're in the audience. I've seen the audience giving signals to board members, on how they want them to vote on certain things. So what happens is that all those arrows that we saw, they just continue to go in every which direction, which again comes back to the superintendent. No focus for the superintendent. So when you have interest groups playing out their thing, whether it's the anti-tax group, whether it's an organized labor union in some places, it's all over the ballpark. Then the board loses focus. It's not their agenda. It's somebody in the audience. High-functioning board does its work through the superintendent. So what does a dysfunctional board do? They walk into a school and say, I don't think that bulletin board should be there. And I worked with a board in Texas that did that. And she showed up every day in a school marching around with a clipboard, taking notes, and giving direction to staff. Now, what's the problem with that? And it might have been good direction. Dave?
So if you're going to manage the district, then you don't need a superintendent, for one. And two is you can't ever say you're not doing a good job, because you took all that power away from him. You took his management direction and everything away from him.
Exactly.
So it's on the board member. So if things go down, it's on you.
Yeah,
and we know that happens, and I've heard stories where board members go around the construction site and say, no, I want you to change this.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. We had that problem in Portland. Yeah. So let's say board member Fred here shows up and gives direction to principals, and it blows up. What are you able to do about that? Do you have any control over Fred? That's virtually a slap on the hand, at best. So what you've got is somebody giving direction to staff, and the staff has to say, what am I supposed to do? They're like the ultimate bosses, but my boss says don't do that, but am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get fired? Staff is always worried about getting fired. We hardly ever fire people, but they're always worried about, offending somebody in the chain. So they're not sure who to follow. Again, now we lose the focus. If somebody is pulling strings around behind the scenes, then we got back to people going in every which way direction. You also cannot discipline that board member. But what can you do for a superintendent who screws up? Adios, yeah. And I've seen lots of boards do it. It doesn't necessarily have to make the newspapers to be a firing, but they get that person moved along because it's just not working. And you can't do that with your colleagues. A high-functioning board also lets the administration make the management decisions for those reasons. And by the way, just so you know, you are all now famous. This is your 15 minutes, Andy Warhol moment of fame. And people overinterpret what you say or where you look or who you stand next to, and they will go around and talk about what you have said even if you haven't said it. They'll say, well, I know exactly what Judy thinks, blah, 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 blah. And if you make the mistake of actually telling people something in confidence, It will only get repeated to their cousin. I mean, that's all they're going to tell, and the cousin's only going to tell his wife. And that, before you know it, it's all over the place. So people like to take advantage of you because, and you don't even know it's happening. They may even just stand next to you and say, oh yeah, we're great buddies. She tells me everything. And it causes problems for you. When I was a brand new board member, my son was 5 and he had to ride the bus. And the bus in August in Houston without air conditioning is pretty miserable. So being the good mother, I called the school and said, can he wear shorts? And they said, oh, no. We believe children behave as they're dressed and he needs to come in his formal work clothes. And she said, but there's going to be a meeting on it and you can always come and state your opinion. I showed up for the meeting and there was the entire faculty in a crescent shape and a chair right there for me. So because you are now famous, you get treated differently. And people somehow or another, create these opportunities for you to look like you're pulling strings. Even if, I'm hoping she wasn't setting me up to look bad, but I certainly, looked like an idiot sitting there telling the staff what I wanted them to do. High-functioning boards operate in the open, involve the community in the decision-making of important issues. So what does a dysfunctional team do? Never mention, don't ask the administration to prepare presentations. You're going to close a school, try doing that without talking to the community. It won't be pleasant when you talk to them, but now you don't talk to them. So dysfunctional boards do this all the time. They make important decisions without consulting at all. It does not mean the community gets to make the decision. Because I know you guys have faced some tough decisions before, and sometimes the community, they get to be involved, they don't get to make the final decision. You have to do that. A high-functioning board communicates as one body and works ethically with the media. What does ethically with the media mean, Angie? What does it mean to you when I say that?
Well, working ethically with the media would be that we know that our procedures say that the only person that speaks on behalf of the board is the board president, and I would assume that no one would be going to the media, I guess as a whistleblower or
Right.
something,
Violating your own policies.
Something to undermine the district is
Yeah.
you're trying to avoid.
We were selling bonds in New York. You used to go off when you sold bonds and they wanted to see your face. And you'd go to New York. And while we're sitting there, I had 2 board members back at home faxing nasty articles about the board to the bonding agency, which would have cost the taxpayers zillions with a lower rating. So, that's unethical with the board. Unethical with the media is really very much about trying to use them as your PR firm or manipulate them or leak to them. And they don't like it. They'll use it, but they won't be manipulated. So they're not our PR firms. They have a job to do. And if your behavior feeds their job to create a little chaos so that it gets interesting, then they're okay with that. But they're not going to cover the fire prevention poster winner. It's just not going to happen. And I know most boards are always on the administration. We need better press. We need better. And that is a very hard thing to control and do. A high-functioning board also conducts short, efficient board meetings with discussions that are respectful, orderly, and to the point. That was never an HISD board meeting. The to the point, we had one woman, somebody prepared a set of questions on every agenda item. We had to have 60 agenda items. She'd have 60 questions. What do you think the rest of the board's reception was to that? We would just get up and go get some coffee, stand behind the screen and talk. The poor superintendent had to sit there and answer 60 questions. She had no ability to influence our thinking at all. So when board members behave in disrespectful ways to the group, the group tends to not be open to being influenced to their thinking or seeing their point of view on an important issue. How long are your meetings usually? Yeah, and that's getting kind of long. You start at 7? Yeah, my mother once told me nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at night. So, we need to get them over because staff has got to go to work the next day. I assume many of you have to go to work the next day. And we tend to make bad decisions when we're pressed and we're tired and it's late and we should be somewhere else. And finally, a high-functioning board establishes a process to orient new board members, provides continuous training, and builds collaboration. So what does a dysfunctional board do? What do you think, Kristen?
A dysfunctional board would not be welcoming or orient new members, and that there would not be training or collaboration, but there would just be disbandment.
Yep. So if you're coming to Santa Fe, I don't know if we're going to do the Fort Bend case, but everybody loves it. So, okay, I hope we will too. And it's nice to have an epilogue because people always ask, well, what happened? Were they terrible forever? But the heart of that story is really about not welcoming the new board. And sometimes it's never on purpose. It's like nobody wants to be mean, but you've worked hard on something, and these new people come in and they rain on your parade, and it makes you feel really bad. So, thinking these things through ahead can make for a high-functioning board. Yes, be prepared. New board members are coming on.
So with that, though, I will say everyone has been welcoming for anybody watching.
That is good to hear. That is good to hear. And did you get some orientation?
Yes, it's starting. It's been ongoing. We're getting there.
Because, yes, you guys are so new. Excellent. Has anybody on the board sat down with you, or was it the administration at this point? Yeah. You're right now, you're just really crunched. But, sometime in the near future, it'll be appropriate to say, this is kind of how we handle things. This is when we meet. You'll get a lot of that from the administration as well. But just kind of, introducing to how the board operates.
I think we both feel comfortable if we have a question, we can ask them. I think that's
Good.
the feeling they gave us.
Yes, and
Great.
every single individual has openly.
Yes.
That's great. Yes, they do not want you to be confused or feel like you can't get a question answered. One of the problems that new board members have, we all had, is you've now stepped into an arena. Shirley knows a ton, so you're not quite the typical board member. But most board members really don't know much about how the organization operates and who the players are and, kind of what the history is and what we've tried to fix and it didn't work or it did work. So, you've got lots of questions. At some point, though, your questions overwhelm the administration. It's just overwhelming how many questions are rattling around inside your heads. So you've got to parse that down. What must I absolutely have to know versus what am I really curious about? The curious about, I would save for casual conversation rather than, I need a report on how many teachers have red hair. I'm just really curious to see if there's a correlation there. Most boards have a policy that says if it takes more than 15 minutes to prepare a report. Now, if it already exists, you get it automatically. But to prepare a report, that takes board approval because the administration just shuts down producing reports for new board members. So you've got to find that balance between, I've got to know this because I can't vote on this item, and I'm really curious about this thing over here. And as you develop relationships with administration, more of your information gathering will be just casual chat, versus reports. Okay. So what you want to be is you want to be a high-functioning board. This is what you want to do. You want to align your thinking. And by the way, You all are new to each other. You may only agree on one thing, but that's okay. Be clear about what that thing is.
Why are you turning them on? So even when you walk here, this one picks it up. Yeah.
Perfect. In fact, I'll move this one over just a little bit, make myself go this way.
Yeah, you have a bigger one. Wider range.
Of your work. And if you do everything on here, this is transformative work at the board level. Let's start at the beginning, over on the upper left-hand corner. Core beliefs and commitments. This group comes together and says, this is what we believe, and this is what we're going to do about it. So, like, for example, you might believe all children can learn. That's nice, but that doesn't get anything done. So what are you going to do about that belief? Are you going to get something done? Are you going to set a measurable goal or a timeline? So that drives absolutely everything else on here. Way too many boards never take that step. They just show up at meetings and talk about what's on the agenda. And so,
Mileage on the white fleet.
yeah, mileage on the white fleet. So then it's the administration driving the agenda instead of you. So if you do this, and by the way, you're so new, it may take a little time before you get your feet kind of on the ground about what you do believe. You know, the stuff that I ran on my first year, I'm embarrassed to look at my own campaign literature. It's like, I didn't understand anything. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it takes a while until you really feel like you can speak with authority and conviction. I know exactly what we need to be working on, the big picture stuff. Then from that, it leads to theories of action for change. The administration is the one that comes in and says, if you want to accomplish this goal, here's how we believe it can best happen. Here's what the research says. These are the best practices, all of that. So the administration is your partner in making things happen because they have the expertise. They also put in 60 hours a week.
And they get paid.
4 or 5 a day.
They get paid.
And they get paid to do it. The next thing over on this is reform policies. In your whole experience as a board member, you might adopt 1 or 2 reform policies. You're going to adopt many policies. The Texas Association of School Boards actually sends you policies that need to be updated because the legislature made a change or something's expired. So you need that. But what you guys believe in and want to see done, and you rely heavily on administrative research, that might be a reform policy. For example, how are you going to hold schools accountable? That's a big discussion. That's a huge discussion. The legislature usually says, well, we're going to do this or that. And, there's not much confidence sometimes at the community level that they're really holding schools accountable. In Houston, we came up with a tool of our own for driving the administration to focus on certain schools so that they could begin to garner resources for schools that really struggled. So you might have your own accountability that has nothing to do with the state. The state's going to hold you accountable for that, but you may decide you need something more. In Portland, they were very concerned about wellness, student, staff, community, and they spent a full year researching and developed their own wellness policy that impacted the things that they had control over. So a big reform policy would influence the behavior of a lot of people, children, adults, community. So your job is to take these beliefs, and if they're strong and they require a theory of action for change to drive them, turn it into a policy. And then you monitor that policy to make sure it's doing what you thought it would do. Your other job is policy development, and that does not mean you get to put a pencil on a piece of paper and write a policy. Most board-written policies end up blowing up. So you want to give direction to people who know all the ins and outs of the administration to make sure that you don't get an unintended consequence. So the staff will probably write it in dialogue. That's what happened when I was in Portland. And oversight. One of the few things that the state has said is your job is to oversee the management of the district. Your job is not to be. And the law used to say that you manage the district. It's now you oversee the management. A building block of reform is things like, how do you run a meeting? How do you prepare a good agenda? How do you deal with constituent services? So there are some very specific things that you need to be good at in order to have a high-functioning team. Roles and responsibilities and relationships, we're going to talk about that tonight. Understanding your role and how you can do it powerfully, and understanding the superintendent's role, because as Jim and I experience, sometimes superintendents get confused about their role. So, both sides have got to understand. A piece that most boards don't ever do is civic capacity building. It is your job to go out and build the community's support of where you want to go, because they're frankly overwhelmed with life. So you need to talk to them and explain, we're concerned about this. If you want to do some really way out and unusual policy, better go build that community support or they'll just cut the plank right off and you'll fall in the drink. So civic capacity building isn't just the superintendent's job. Transition planning. You're all going away. Charles is going away. Each of you are going away at some point in the future. Think about how do you build people who will become maybe bench strength to move up into the superintendency, be interested in running for the board one day when there are openings. You know, you constantly want to be thinking about where's the next line of leadership coming. And I want to mention something because I know you're facing a really hard job here, which is to pick a superintendent. I want to mention it because I've done it 3 times, and it is the worst experience of my life. It is awful, awful. 2 of the times, the candidate we picked, when we brought him home and unwrapped the box, the person who was inside was not the person that we met in the interviews. They had miraculously transformed into something different. So the 3rd time, we picked one of our fellow colleagues on the board to be the superintendent, and that was the best pick we made in my experience. So I don't want you all to have to go back and recreate the wheel that the rest of us have figured out after we've been run over by the wheel. Do not feel like you have to go fast. There is no magic timeline out there. There are no superintendents saying, oh, I would not interview for a job that starts in January or March. Or ignore all that concern that people will throw at you. Oh, you need to get this done tomorrow. You don't know each other. You don't know what you all care about. How are you going to demand a superintendent fit your picture? You don't have a picture. So spend some time getting to know each other, exploring what you care about. Where are we going? Where are we broken? Get data from the superintendent to better understand where the district is. What have they conquered? Have they moved exponentially, but they're still not at the very top? Okay. You just need to know that. But do not let people shove you and push you and make you make a decision when you don't even know, most of you have not even dealt with superintendents before. I know Shirley's had lots of experience. But even that, it takes a while to really get to understand what a candidate's really about. What questions do you ask to really probe in the areas that you care about? To say, well, have you had experience with bilingual students? Yes. Okay, where's the follow-up question? How are you going to dig deeply to really understand what strengths people bring to the table in the interviews when you're just kind of getting to explore what some of the issues are here locally in your district? So, Jim.
Well, I don't know if this is the right time, but I'm hearing what you're saying, and I think that we should delay our superintendent search. I've got this schedule that Hazard Young and Atia put together, and it is incredibly intense. 5-hour days, 5 hours on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, and it's extremely a demanding schedule. And one of the things that I learned in Wood Badge was how groups come together. There's 4 phases. One is they're forming, then they're storming as they're getting to know each other, and then they're norming before they can become performing. And right now we're forming because we've lost 2 trustees. We've worked together for the last 7 months, but now we've got 2 brand new trustees. And I think that we should pause and not try to rush this. I think we should go to SLI. I don't know. Go to Santa Fe. I don't know if I get to go to that again, but we should do that.
Your whole team to Santa Fe.
Well, then we should go.
We've got several districts that are talking. We've got like 3 other districts thinking about bringing the whole team. So you're all on the same page.
So
we've got a lot of new people.
Throwing that out there right now because I'm really feeling a lot of pressure on that. And I think it's a bad idea for us to move forward right now.
So, full transparency, Jim called me the other day and brought that up. And, you know, I saw what he was saying, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of our priority. And I also, I look at that schedule and it scares me. And yesterday when I was reading the epilogue, right? I remembered that, you know, Tim Jenny left in July, right? June.
Going into deliberating on a topic that's not on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
This is a team building as opposed to the.
Discussion about timing, yeah. No, yeah, he's right, because we actually,
I do find a time to talk about this. It's the most important job that you have, picking the right superintendent. And there is no magic to timelines or, you know, the right question. I mean, you've got to decide who you are, and organically you will, as you form a team, back to the forming, norming, and storming, you will get to know each other better and get a better sense of what kind of skill set you need. Let's say that you are all extreme introverts, you know, and you hire a superintendent who's an introvert, so there's not much discussion, not many people talking. Or you're all extreme extroverts, and you hire somebody who's an extreme introvert, and he begins to feel overwhelmed by you all. So, I mean, those are the things you talk about amongst yourselves as you get to know each other. And then the superintendent needs to fit your image of what you want. You don't fit their image of what they want to be. So, just a part of transition planning. The line that you see on the page is the line between management and governance. And the line has holes, as you see. Notice, the superintendent's line goes through, the superintendent's arrows go through, and your arrows stop at the line. Why do you think that is?
He's your point of contact.
Right. Gonna take your good words and go out and slay dragons. And if that person is not with you, mentally, understanding where you want to go, then they can't get it done. But you're not supposed to get into administration. So your work's supposed to stop here. The superintendent is not a voting member, but comes through and participates with you guys. Okay, let's take a look at these scenarios. I'm going to read one, and what I want you to do is I want you to tell me if the board stepped across the line here. Okay, did the board step into management? Did they not pay attention to that management line? Or did what they do was totally appropriate, because that is their job, and they should be doing this thing. Okay, let's go into Board Member Dixon makes an appointment with the superintendent, goes to her office, sits down and says, Madam Superintendent, I've been hearing a lot of complaints from principals and parents about the performance of this area superintendent in my part of town. I really think you need to move her to another part of the district or into central office, because there is so much discontent with how this person is performing her job. Did Board Member Dixon step across the line? If you think so, raise your hand. Okay, how could this have been handled better by Board Member Dixon, who has good information, and the superintendent needs to know?
Left off the last sentence.
Right.
Telling him how to do his job.
Tell him how to do the job. Move this person. But the first part, absolutely, you get to be the eyes and ears in your community for the superintendent. You should go tell them if they're discontent. Don't let it be a surprise. Okay, who would like to do number 2?
I'll do it.
Go, Jim.
Board Member Jones calls the superintendent one day and says, Mr. Superintendent, I want an update on the contract negotiations that are going on right now for the sale of the Main Street property. What's the status of offers and how are the negotiations going?
Okay, did the board member step across the line in what Board Member Jones said to the superintendent? Raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think so, Angie? What is it about?
I think more of if this were the board president asking the superintendent on behalf of adding an agenda item, it wouldn't
That's
But
correct.
This way, it seems a demand for an individual piece of,
I want the skinny,
right,
one person. No, you're completely right. Board president's saying, let's put it on the agenda, perfect solution.
So I think you're absolutely right, because this was a kind of a little bit, I'm going to admit, it's a little bit of a tough one for me. But I think when you say demand, I think that's what does it. Because if we're sitting around at, I don't know, a thing for principals, celebration for principals, that, hey, Charles, what's going on with those negotiations, that's not necessarily, you're just talking, hey, yeah, you know what, we got this bid on this, and.
And then you're in control of information the rest of the board doesn't have.
Well, that's the, yes.
That's not fair.
Right, so you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some of these things that are kind of gray.
They're kind of fuzzy.
They are.
I'm the board member. I do get to know how things are going. Yeah, but.
Isn't it the right now that
Yes, that's the problem.
the time?
And saying, the board would like to know, or I would like to know, so can you bring it to the board? That's okay too. But the whole board gets to hear at the same time. Hang on. Let's do number 4. Shirley, can you read number 4 for us?
Board Member Beasley, during a regular board meeting, says, Madam Superintendent, I have just returned from a conference where they were talking about a new bilingual education program that has gotten great results in other districts. I have a lot of information about the program, and I would like you to put it on the agenda for our next meeting so we can adopt it for our district.
Did Board Member Beasley step across the line? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you think Board Member Beasley did. Okay. Shirley, why do you think Board Member Beasley did?
She's automatically assuming that we're going to adopt it for our district.
Exactly.
Up until
How could she have phrased that to be appropriately in her lane?
I have a lot of information about the program and would like you to put it on the agenda for our next meeting, period, so that we can find out
discuss it.
more. Right, to
Yes.
find out more about it.
Because there's nothing worse than moving fast on these kind of things. You guys have seen it before, and you just rush out and adopt something. Then you find out later, your staff could have told you, it didn't prove well, or it costs more than you think, so yes, definitely have workshops. And I assume you guys have a fair number of workshops every year. That's where you get to learn. I find the board meetings are really actually not super valuable for you all as a team to learn. It's those workshops where you dig deeply into something, you get to ask any question, tons of questions, and you're focused on maybe 1 or 2 topics. Those are really valuable. The board meeting is actually not an opportunity to learn. It's more the administration saying we're about to do this thing. And if it's a big deal thing, there should have been a workshop on it first. Okay? Let's see. Kristen, can you do number 5?
School board member Ketchum arrives unannounced at a school one day, steps into the principal's office, and requests a tour of the building.
Okay, did Ketchum cross the line? Raise your hand. Okay, what's the problem with this one? Kristen, what?
He arrived unannounced at a school, and he should have coordinated with the superintendent if he wanted to.
So what's the problem with arriving unannounced?
Because you're the board, and number 1, everything should go through the superintendent. So first and foremost, that's a no-no. There's nothing wrong with going to a school, providing you've already arranged that via the super.
Remember my little speech about you being a famous person? If you show up, what will a principal do?
Panic?
Yeah, pretty much.
Potentially.
I don't know, Shirley, if you did this, but a lot of principals have a certain tone or a bong or a word they send out over the speaker that lets everybody know that there's an important person, and quit screaming and going crazy and get your kids quieted down or whatever. So you can never arrive and really, scope out what's going on because they know you're in the building. If you show up, what is a principal likely to do?
Cater to you, drop what they're doing so they lose focus on whatever they're trying to accomplish, because now you've taken away whatever they were achieving.
They're doing an ARD that has taken 6 months to schedule. They will let everybody sit there, and they will go out and take you on a tour of the building. Yeah, which you've now just destroyed a very important process. So, showing
No, I
up.
like to think we're just common people.
Exactly.
However, respect
Famous.
the process.
Yes, you are famous, and they will drop everything, and that's not fair. Principals will tell you, by the way, all the time, just come anytime. I can't wait to show you this program or whatever. They are lying to you. They don't really mean come anytime. They are lying.
Is that true?
Yeah. Like, this wasn't the day.
There you go. Now I believe you, Kathy.
Testimony. They really do want you to come, but in an organized way, they would be thrilled to show you their building and their programs. Okay. Let's see. Hang on. Number 8 is a tough one. Let's talk about that one. I worked with the Atlanta School Board after their scandal. So, Jim, why don't you read number 8?
Board member Hernandez calls the superintendent to say he has received a tip from a trusted parent that the principal and several teachers at Taft Elementary School falsified test results on the latest state exam. I'm convinced that something is going on at that school, he tells the superintendent. Please investigate.
So did he step across the line in what he said to the superintendent? Okay, why do you think? Angie?
Well, I think that clearly that you tell this, but I think you go over the line by saying, I'm convinced that something's going on at the school, when you have no, you have some hearsay going on.
Right.
But I think that you have to be very careful with, that's a huge issue that someone is accusing a campus of. And so I think it's almost like to remove that one sentence that provides an opinion. You could include, I would say, please investigate isn't even that's the superintendent's job. So stopping after sharing, here's what I heard.
Okay, here's what I heard. Dave, what's your thought?
Yeah, that's, I forgot what I was going to say, sorry.
It was very pithy, I'm sure.
It's one of the things that I learned, because, man, I made all the mistakes, okay? I'm just telling you, I made all the mistakes, okay? And, you get these people, oh, my God, and you just think that everything they're telling you is 100% true. And later, when you kind of learn, it's like, okay, I know there's another side of the story. And so, but at first it was like, Charles, this is wrong. It's like with this, right? And now it's like, Charles, this is what I hear. I know there's always two sides to a story. Can you please check this out?
Yeah. You are the eyes and ears of the superintendent. So they need to know that this gossip is going around. So they can either investigate or put the kibosh on. I would, instead of saying, please investigate, I would be more inclined to say, can you get back to us as a group and tell us what is real and what's not real, rather than being directive. But yes, this is serious stuff, and this goes on.
Right.
I mean, I worked with the Atlanta board after, what did they dismiss? I mean, they thought it was like 90 different people participated in cheating. I mean, it was horrible. The superintendent, did she go to prison or did she die before she got to prison? I can't remember, but I mean, it's a big,
it was like
horrible
5, 6 years ago, something like that? 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, 6 or 7 years ago. The board pushed the issue with the superintendent, who said there's no cheating going on. It's fine. The business community investigated and said there's no cheating going on. The board continued to press. The state accrediting agency came in and told the board, if you press any more, we're going to decredit your school system. Then the governor got involved, and the governor did an investigation and found there was massive cheating going on. So the board, had the right information. No matter what they did, no matter who they tuned to, they got beaten down. But in the end, they were actually right. So this is it gets real difficult. This is when it's super helpful to talk to your lawyer and say, okay, now what do we do? How do we handle this? This is, we've been brushed off, but we actually believe this is going on. How do we get a good investigation without, crossing the line here?
It happened in El Paso, too.
Yes, he went to prison. Gonzalez? I think so, yeah. Okay, but if you come to Santa Fe, we'll do more of these little goodies. This is your group, and this is your superintendent, who is part of the team. That's why I call it Team of 8. Just round robin, let's do this real fast. If the board's job is to make policy, what's the superintendent's job?
Implement.
Yeah, make it happen. Also to write it and take direction from you guys. Board's role is to hire the superintendent. What's the superintendent's role in hiring?
Well, we hire the superintendent. The superintendent hires everybody else.
It hires everybody else. And I think that is now written in the Texas Education Code. But I don't know 100%. It is, thank you. Superintendent's role, coordinate the development and implementation of a strategic plan to meet district goals. It is not your job to write the strategic plan. It is your job to do what?
Set the goal.
Set the goals. Make sure there's a strategic plan developed. Direct the superintendent. Let's do a strategic plan. You know, come back to us in 6 months. So you're doing all the driving on that except the detail of what goes in the plan. Your job is to adopt an annual budget. What's the superintendent's job?
Create the budget.
Create the budget.
Spend it.
And spend it, and spend it. And amend it, and come and tell you how the budget's going several times a year. So you'll know if you're getting into a hole. Superintendent's job is to provide the board with recommendations on all problems and issues under board consideration. What's your job?
Approve or disapprove the recommendations.
Exactly. Do not ever let a superintendent come to you and say, I don't know, guys, what do you want to do about some big problem? And I have seen that happen.
You have to.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Remember that meeting, Jim?
Exactly. Okay, next. The board's role is to approve personnel appointments. What's the superintendent's role?
Well, they bring the personnel appointments to us.
They bring them, right. And you do weird things like vote to terminate somebody, but you don't get to hear all the facts. Why don't you get to hear the facts?
Their decision.
I'm going to fire somebody, but I don't even understand the case. Because in the future, you may be the jury. You serve as a jury sometimes. Yeah. So you don't want to have the administration present their case first. You got to fire the person, and if they appeal, then you get to hear the whole case. So it's sort of a perfunctory thing, but it freaked me out the first time I said, board, I'm firing somebody? Like, what did they do wrong? Anyway.
Trust us.
Huh?
That's what you hear. Trust us, right?
Yeah, trust. Superintendent's role is to manage district spending and operations. What's the board's role in that?
Supervise.
You are supervising. You are overseeing management. You want to know if you've put in a whole new bus system. You want to get a report back. How'd it go? You want to monitor. So it's okay for you to get the big picture. We call it nose in, fingers out. So you get to nose around and look at stuff. What you don't get to do is reach in and solve problems and come up with solutions. That's what the administration has to do. Your job, the board's role is to refer constituents to the appropriate administrator. What's the administration's role?
Handle the issues.
Deal with it.
Right.
And report back to you. You need to know, was it solved? Was it not? And by the way, just because the constituents had their concern listened to doesn't mean that they're right. So they may get back to you and say, no. Your job is to evaluate the superintendent. In the area of evaluation, what's the superintendent's job?
Provide information on the metrics that we establish.
So the superintendent has to make the case of where the district's gone. And you guys have developed the metrics in collaboration back when you set goals. So it's one thing to have a goal, we're going to improve third grade reading. Well, how much, over what period of time? You know, you got to have a real SMART goal. The superintendent also evaluates all the rest of the staff or ensures that that occurs. Superintendent's job is to establish and maintain good public and media relations. What's your job?
Behave ourselves in public.
That is actually also your job. You also have a face to put on in public and how you handle each other and how you handle. And you don't have to look too far to find boards that have not done a good job at that. And I remember when I had left Portland and I'd come back, and so I asked a friend, so how's the district doing? She says, oh, it's doing great because it hadn't been in the newspaper. That's how people judge whether you're doing well or not, whether you're in the newspaper. So you have to find a way to be in the newspaper about the goals you set and achieved. Okay, the most complex thing that you're going to do is deal with each other, and this group deal with the superintendent. That is really, really, really hard work. And if you've been in any group, you know how hard that work really is. And I poo-pooed that when I was a brand new board member, making all the mistakes, I'm just going to come up with these brilliant solutions that I have in my brain, and I'm just going to tell everybody, and they're just going to fall over and follow me, and that didn't really happen. So it really is about how we work with each other, understanding. We finally started to do some testing, and I found out that I'm an optimist. I'm a yellow. But if you push my button, I'm a red. So under pressure, I go to a different place. I'm no longer yellow. I get very testy. So understanding each other and what drives you, super important. How many of you are introverts? One? How many are extroverts? You know for sure. Okay. So the introverts think that the extroverts are beating up on them, doing all the talking. And extroverts think the introverts, they can't be very smart, they don't say that much. So there's this real misunderstanding about each other just on that area, let alone all the other ways we're going to learn about each other. And then how you work with the superintendent and how you work with each other individually. In collaboration, should not feel pressure to have unanimous votes. But as you're working on things, the idea is to collaborate. So you don't speak ill of your other board members. Like I said, people will tell what you said. Listen when colleagues speak. This is my big problem. I'm so busy thinking about the next thing I'm going to say, sometimes I don't hear what the other person really said. Unanimity is not required, but common courtesy. And no surprises. We don't want to surprise the superintendent. We don't want the superintendent to surprise us. You kind of have to agree on that. And finally, practice self-discipline. What does that mean, self-discipline? What does that mean?
Well, exactly what it says. Practice self-discipline in the boardroom.
So you each have to discipline yourselves. Sometimes the board president, the lucky board president, gets to practice self-discipline. I've seen boards that are a mess and turn to the superintendent and say, make her stop. Well, you're like, what? That's the boss. You can't. So the superintendent's not in charge of how we behave. We are in charge of how we behave. Think about how much you talk in board meetings as well. It's not part of any curriculum, but it is a pet peeve of mine. I had board members when I was on the board that would take 20 minutes to express their opinion about something. Well, after about minute 10, I'd zoned out. I was answering my mail, doing something else. If you want to persuade people, if you really want to convince them to come to your side, less talking is always more. The less you say, the more pointed you are in your argument. And by the way, if 3 people have already made the argument, I piggyback on them. A lot of times people feel pressure, the community needs to hear what I think. No, they're going to judge you on the performance of the district, not what you say individually in board meetings. These are your 3 most powerful levers to create change in this district. select the right superintendent, hence my concern about going too fast before you actually know each other. Reform policies, won't be many of those, but they can really change the dynamics. And public engagement, you going out and talking to your reference group about what this district is doing, where you're going, gathering opinions so you can bring it back and contribute what the community thinks to the discussion. So power is not a zero-sum game, and a lot of community members will try to convince you of this. Like I said, go slap that superintendent around. No. A powerful superintendent makes you guys super powerful. And if you, a powerful board makes the superintendent very powerful. And we do it by being in our own lanes. So, I think we've covered the goals of the session. I've got you out of here before 9 o'clock. Isn't that good?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes. So, any questions? That was a lot of stuff, and I know we've talked about it. And we really hope you'll be in Santa Fe. As a group, it would be fabulous. And I'd say you should bring your interim superintendent with you because it's a chance for you to get level set, everybody on the same page. Jim and Dave have heard this before, and so they'll react to it in a way of somebody who's actually been on a board a long time. And that's kind of interesting to hear versus somebody who's been on it 7 months or 2 weeks. Very different opinions. Like, what is it? I've never even heard of that. We do a lot of case studies, probably, 3 or 4 during the 4-day retreat. And those are usually very interesting conversations with the group. It probably won't be more than about 35 board members, 4 or 5 superintendents. But it's a really good chance for you to ask all the questions you've been thinking about. How does this work? Why does it work? Why do I have to do that? I don't understand. Any other thoughts? Mr. President.
So I hate that, by the way. Dave is fine.
Dave will do. Mr. Dave.
Yeah, I think, again, that the whole Santa Fe thing it was so eye-opening for me. I had gone right after I joined the board, so 2 months later, something like that, and the whole I Achieve thing, I kind of ran, that was my thing, right?
Right.
And during that session or whatever you want to call it, gathering, whatever, I actually sat down with Don McAdams. He had his book, What School Board Members Can Do, okay? And I encourage you to find a copy and read that because that helped me a lot. And I'm sitting here, I sat down with the guy, and we wrote a resolution of how to get something, how to make the district basically prove that this program was successful before they went and spent another $20 million. And so he and I worked on that right there. And I came back, presented it, and it was a 6-1 vote with Bruce Albright ripping out his page. He ripped out his page out of the notebook and said, well, howdy doody. It's still out there on tape. So, I mean, it was so helpful. It was so helpful to me. Just like that, even though, I've seen this before, but it still makes me think. Okay? So, and
we'll network with other board members around the state, which is also one of the nice things. The same for SLI at TASB. It's just a wonderful thing to know people in other districts. How did you handle this in your district? If you've been through a search process, tell me what was good, what was bad.
I have a thought. When I first got on the board in 2010, the board had previously done strategic planning a year or 2 earlier, and they always talked about the strategic plan. And I said, I don't know what the strategic plan is because you created it before I got here and you haven't shared it with me. So then we went through it again. So all of our core commitments and beliefs that we created several years ago, we need to go back and relook at them all over again and to figure out if they're still applicable, if they need to be changed or modified or whatever, and we need to create a new strategic plan.
Yeah, because you're a new thing.
You're a new thing. And so we should all go to CRSS for the training, because that will help us do just that. Revisit the core commitments and beliefs and create a new strategic plan. That's my thought.
And then as you begin to think about what those core beliefs are, you will look for a superintendent who also believes those things. Then you're leading the superintendent. The superintendent's not leading.
So I want to ask a question, because I think you and I actually, when you said, are you going to CRSS? I said, well, I don't know. Should I go? So should Jim go? I mean, because typically it's for new board members.
Right. Now, we're going to have several teams that will have senior and junior board members there.
Well, so I want to ask everybody, I'm just going to ask, would you like Jim and I to go? I'm at whatever, and you're not going to hurt my feelings if you say no. I mean, I'm sure I could find something to do in the middle of July, but like
I
work.
would like you to go, but if the intent, I'm going to just be honest. You stunned me with your recommendation of not proceeding with the superintendent search, and I'm not going to discuss it because it is not an agenda item. But I think we should all go. But I do think we should reflect on, I know it's a team building event, but is it something normally that the superintendent joins you? Mm-hmm. I would love to not have to do it twice. Not to say that I value the experience, but why would we not wait to go to Santa Fe until we actually have our superintendent? Because then we're doing work and we're leaving behind this new.
Right. No, it's a good question.
This new leader for our whole district. So,
Wait, what leader are we leaving behind?
a superintendent.
You mean not hiring one?
Not hiring by the end of July.
So when we originally,
I'm not going to. Right. So, anyways, just throwing that out there. Sorry, Kristen.
Without discussing the timeline, the value for you guys of being there together is you don't know what to look for in a superintendent. And the time you will spend there together, visiting with other superintendents who are present, other board members, and in the content, will give you a much better sense of what you want. So it will help you when you're shopping. Now, then when your new person comes on, you all are going to be speaking a similar language. You're going to be using some of these terms, and you're going to look for a superintendent who understands those terms and agrees. And it will just make the hiring more rational for you as a group.
Right, and I do hear you, but I'm going back to your diagram that we talked about here, that part of our job is to build civic capacity in our community, and I do think building trust in a community is a paramount component, and that our community has provided us input on what they want. We had lots of stakeholder groups, and to me, that's that civic capacity that you're trying to build in them, and that I know, HAY
Hazard, Young, and Atia.
Yeah, has, worked with us on building a leadership profile. And so,
which is great, except for the two people who didn't get to participate.
Well, and hopefully you did as a parent or a community member, you did. Right, but there's a point, just like Jim said, or I can't remember, you came on and the strategic plan was already done. And so I'm assuming that every time and I know you didn't have much board turnover, but every time a new board member turns over, you don't recreate every policy and you don't recreate the strategic plan. You have to actually take, obviously we need to look at some more and, look at things like how we can actually measure and monitor growth and what instrument will help us do that. But
with your new superintendent, you will develop a new strategic plan.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Yeah. And so I guess
it's kind of a catch-22 at that, a little bit,
Right.
You never get to start from start.
Right.
You're always in the middle. You're building the airplane in the air.
Comment. Okay, first of all, yes, I do believe that both of you need to come. I believe we all need to go. And I'm going to say this, since it is team building, Kristen and Judy, I want to make sure that we all come together right now. The onboarding that you're receiving now, we were not privy to the same welcome. And I'm just going to leave it that way. And I believe that we can start again. And in starting again, and we've talked about it. We've talked about breaking bread. When you do leave town, you have and you're in a hotel and you have all of these different events. All of those things really, truly help to form a team. And I'm not necessarily, the superintendent thing that was new, and I know we're not supposed to talk about it, so I won't talk about it. But the other, I want the opportunity to meet other board members. I want the opportunity to make connections and get phone numbers and bring back with me. So when I need to talk to someone, and I don't necessarily want everyone to know my opinion, and I need a person who has some experience. I want to be able to find those people.
Yeah, a sounding board.
Yes, and with everything that is, since we are here on May the 27th, 2021, and going into this endeavor, this is that's all I've ever heard, and I know that. The biggest thing that we have is to choose a superintendent. And for us not to be, I need to know you all. And so and the way that I'm going to get to know you is if we have breakfast, and then I know what you take in your coffee, and then you have a conversation, about another rock, and I have conversation about something else. Right. So I truly believe that this will assist and help. I really hate that it's not in June. I think SLI will assist and help us also. And I would, you all know I don't like to say hope or whatever. It is my goal that when we go through SLI, that we come back and we are a cohesive unit. And we're able to do some things, and we're able to have critical conversations where we can respect each other. And that's
right. Perfect. Hear, hear. Well, I have great hope for you guys.
Thank you for saying that, Shirley. That means a lot. So,
yeah.
I want to add to that. So, if we do all decide that we're going to go, this year, whether we have a superintendent or not, or picked out, that's another discussion. My hope was to continue just like we did in 2012. Jim said we worked with you for 18 months, whether we want to do it that long. But if there's a new superintendent, in the summer, if there's one in the fall, to continue to work all together as that team of 8. Again, I'm the one that started to write the article, Team of 8, so great. But I will tell you the conversations that we had once we kind of started to stabilize. I will never forget the conversation up in that room upstairs with Charles's team and the board. And it was like, wow, this is all starting to make sense. And we were building trust. I remember one of the things we told them, listen, if something's not going well, we're not going to call for your firing. Just tell us the truth. And we had these honest conversations with the E-team. And it was amazing. It was transformational.
Yeah. The power of conversation.
And synergy.
Yeah, but we had to learn, we just had to learn all these things that you just talked about, and we had to build trust. And again, I'm telling you, Jenny Bailey, myself, and Grail had zero trust in the administration, nor did Bruce Albright, because he had been there a year before, And I didn't know Jim, I didn't know Susan, but again, we've been down this road, we made it work.
I want to make a few comments.
Sorry.
So before I came to this meeting, I think to me it's really important to be a good board member. So, but today I really feel I think it's more important for all of us as a team to be a good board member together. I think that's really what I learned the most tonight. Another thing is I feel like before I came also I feel like getting a new superintendent, it's the highest priority, right? But today I feel like the team building, actually we're on the same page, understand each other and know each other, like Shirley said, like we can share, like we understand each other, and we're willing to work not as individually, as a team, and then we can hire a superintendent. I think that's became my higher priority. That's just how I feel from tonight. Yeah.
And if I don't know if stop me, but speaking of the board orientation, I don't know if that could be a training that could maybe I can join again, and I don't know if I know what procedures say, but I did make a suggestion to Rick that, or I actually asked him, is that a board? Is that something you can actually provide? And just as a more formalized piece. So I don't know, Dave, if you would consider that where we
I will consider whatever you guys think is
where we
helpful.
actually have a board orientation that we really we really look at some of those documents in the handbook and that we were given, and I know I've already been, but I would love to join these two ladies as
I would love to
as
join.
part of
The
that.
more the merrier, right?
Whatever you guys think is helpful, then I'm all for it.
And if we could
Different
ask,
things that we're
I don't
doing.
know if we could ask Rick, I know that I've already I asked him in the past, is this something we could consider? And I wasn't the board president, I was just asking out of curiosity. And
Absolutely.
just
so-
throwing
so
that
you
out there.
post it.
So we're all starting on the same page, on the same page with the same understanding.
You
and-
cannot get too much information.
I have one question regarding the training. So it sounds like this is going to be ongoing. Is that right?
That's I mean, it's all up to you guys.
Okay, I'm good with that. But one thing I am curious about, I guess, the curiosity part. I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, my mind. But anyhow, you mentioned extrovert, introvert, et cetera, and there are so many different formats for personality testing, and I've found it to be extremely helpful when I'm working with groups more intimately as well, to know, because I then can understand what not to do, what makes them tick, what doesn't. Is that something that you're going to be doing, or is that part of the?
That is not part of what we do, but it's certainly something that we can arrange.
We kind of did that several months ago. That was the one that I actually attended, so we did kind of do that.
We took the
but
Myers-Briggs. Was it the Myers-Briggs? Yes.
But if we want to do
we
that,
can share data. I mean, that would
There's
help.
several really good ones out there.
yeah.
It's just part of getting to know each other more.
Right, and also
Maybe we all
being
need to do a
efficient with
different
time
one,
if you know.
just since we,
And maybe a little differently, because I mean there were some issues about you got to consider privacy issues with that, which a couple of us had serious concerns about, because every one of those documents that y'all filled out can be considered public information. So people want to find out, let me see, what makes Angie tick? Public information request. The board held a meeting on such and such a date, and they handed out this information. They took, and somebody has access to all that stuff. So I know it's.
I'm proud of you.
I
it's
just-
not,
I want you to know what makes me tick.
I'm very okay with it too. I was very okay with it.
I do have one question. So, and it's for you guys too. So, when you say like an orientation, are we talking about like in a group setting like this, where we go over kind of like what we did with the board self-evaluation, or?
well, I think, so that's a really good question, Dave. I think it's really important, since we just, and they weren't on the board, but we just approved the evaluation. I don't necessarily think we need to look at the superintendent evaluation, because that seems like a moot point right now. But to actually go through, especially the B series, and to really look at the B series, look at some of the key pieces of procedures. I think that would be important. And, just some simple, things about how to maneuver through here. And, we did some things, and I don't know if that's what was done in the past, but it wound up that Shirley and I were the only two board members in here, and all of the E-team was in here. And it was, while it was nice, I'm going to be honest, I felt like I was consuming their workday, and I'm not sure that that was the most valuable piece. I think if we want to welcome the newest to the team, that we do that in a more social setting rather than. I liked the opportunity to talk to them, and I liked that they got to know me, but I still didn't like the fact that I really kind of felt in the hot seat, like you said, because we had two chairs, and then all of the E-team was here.
I did that with
And it was
Tim
like-
Jenny and his gang. It's the same thing. It's like, what?
It was
And they're all
representative.
talking in ABCs, which you
Shirley
guys
loves her stories. So,
I love my
but-
stories, so it.
Yeah.
talking to us with all the acronyms and stuff, and you guys probably stood a lot more than
Yeah.
I did at
Well-
the time. And I'm like, and even Tim Jenny was like, all right, let's knock off all the ABC stuff, But it was like, it was so overwhelming.
But
and,
even
yeah.
just something so simple as take an agenda,
Sure.
one of our big agendas, and just explain.
What does it mean?
Like here's how this rolls when we go through things, and here's how the consent agenda and if you want to pull something, this is how you how you say it. The helping people
Right.
feel successful.
Those are simple things that we never think about,
That's board
'cause-
operating procedure.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I know that, I don't know that we can say that, but I think that that's a team building piece, that doing the work, I think the board operating procedures need to be
If I'm
updated,
understanding-
and that could, be
Correct.
something.
If I'm understanding correctly, I believe, now this is just based on the SLI PDFs that I was reading for San Antonio, but I believe much of that is going to be addressed in many of those
The
courses.
new board, if you sign up
If you
for some of
signed
the new
up
board
for
member
new board
stuff.
training, which I presume,
Well, and I
Possibly
have,
did.
but what you probably won't be going over is specific B series local policy.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. Like the guiding documents and the policy, I think it's
Right.
so
I think that's a great idea.
important, because that is going to help you next
Let's
April
do
when we
it.
do the evaluation, the self-evaluation, and when we figure out as a team how we are promoting, how we measure these metrics and milestones, and provide oversight. You can't provide oversight if you don't know what's,
Yeah.
especially in that B series.
I think that's
to
a good
me.
idea. And is that something that you, Kathy could facilitate? Would you
I
be
think-
comfortable with that, or?
I think you guys should facilitate.
Okay.
You're sitting board members, you kind of know how things were. I would go through the board operating procedure.
Legally, Jonathan, we just post it as training. Okay.
That's what I was going to say. Once we
right.
involve more than 3 board members, then we'll need to post it, but it's something that we can do.
Yeah, and you probably aren't going to get a big audience.
Okay.
We had what, 1 tonight? Oh, we had 6, and then I thought it dropped to 1, and you said it was your wife. Okay, he said he was going to be in a board meeting.
Anyway, but I do think that our legal counsel would be really helpful in that as well. So even if Rick doesn't.
Rick could maybe lead it,
I
or
think-
Jonathan,
I
or.
think Rick could lead it, or we could facilitate it ourselves.
I think you board members ought to say, this is the way we've done it, and we tried that, and that didn't work so well.
Right.
We tried this, and it,
that might be good team building in itself.
Yeah.
it's quite enlightening, because they know kind of,
And we don't have to do it in this building,
just got to post where it is.
right?
One question, because you mentioned the 3 or more, and then it would have to be posted. So is that the same for our next onboarding?
No, because
Would
it'll be,
they to
well, they
participate
would,
as well?
if we went to 4, then we would
So
have
then,
to post
yes.
it.
Okay.
So that's why I said if we want to include everyone, and we can still have our introduction next week, but we may need to swing back around and have a more formal and address some of and go dig a little bit deeper, and so we can plan something.
Gotcha.
in addition to, but if
don't
we
want that.
include more than 3 board members, then it would have to be posted.
Y'all can do paper, rock, scissors.
I think that we need, well, we can still do that for Tuesday, right?
And not worry about posting. I mean, post everything. There's no secret here, you know.
Yeah, just do it.
And do Tuesday, and the reason for that, we want to hear what you all are going to hear. So if I can speak.
Oh,
for you.
absolutely.
So,
You can always speak for me.
Okay, appreciate it, Angie. And so, Ms. Hanan, Anna.
Okay,
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Really
you.
participate.
thank you.
Thank you.
And honestly, I need to get to the hospital too. So
Okay.
I just,
I'll follow up on
We just
that.
want to,
Right, I'll follow up on that then. So if that's the
You're
desire.
planning it Tuesday?
they're
Yeah,
Tuesday, Tuesday 2 to 4.
But
Tuesday,
is that the
2 to 4.
one like they said?
So
with
we can
two
either-
chairs and the people. Wow.
Yes.
Oh, that's not going to be the one. That's not
Is
with
that what y'all
everybody.
Is that
talking
what
about?
we're doing?
I
That's
think
what
so.
we're wondering. Is
That's
this
the,
the
see,
year
that's
on?
when you were saying that, I was like.
That's the one
so you
you're
don't wanna
doing. I
do
don't
that.
need to do
No,
that again.
Right, okay. So moot point,
That's why I was saying,
Okay.
that's on Tuesday.
Okay.
Oh, no, we're-
So, no, well, you.
I do have another story
so
I can tell,
Don't
but
post that. Oh, I have another story.
Yeah.
I'll bring my dad's watch. I'll tell that one.
That's why I was saying, if we go through with our Tuesday and then plan one that's more comprehensive based on what I heard you all wanting to do, then, or if you all want us to consider posting,
No.
Monday's
If
a
that-
holiday,
no,
so I
if
wanted
it's-
everybody to understand that as well.
No,
And
if
so
it's the
that may be.
E-team, they've
But let me
already-
ask,
they've met
remember
me.
we were in the room and then we came out for the E-team. The E-team was a separate one. So is there going to be something talked about prior to the E-team, or it's all the E-team?
Well, that's the typical plan, that we would maybe orient them to the information that's in the binder and then come out and just have them have a face-to-face introduction with the executive team.
Okay. Okay.
But I hear from you all that there's some comprehensive, more structured, possibly going through, especially the B series policy. So there could be a follow-up.
Series, and I just, but Dave, I know Dave needs to get to the hospital, but you can maybe decide, because I would think is super important for 2 new people to see what our,
Yeah, no,
what
it is.
our
And that's-
board evaluation
right,
is, especially, because that will guide how we
that just got changed.
roll.
So,
Right. It's
right.
brand new for all of us.
It is. It's very important to see that, and that's what I was going to just, meet these two and just say, okay, here's, kind of do that. Here's our core beliefs and commitments, and this is when we wrote this. This is what we were thinking at the time. But I think that just to get together as a team and do that, I think is even better.
Yeah, I do
That's
too.
in those policies that you're talking about. Yeah. No, I think that's great. The possibilities are really endless. That's why this is what started it all for me. And I know what I started out like, and I know what we became. And so I just felt like, it's like a franchise. They have a process that works, and they repeat it over and over and over again. And so if it worked one time, we're all just people, again, we weren't a family back then, and so we got it to work. So,
But I just want to plug this in. I understand when something has worked or perceived to have worked. I think that we have different talent. And
Oh,
we
absolutely.
definitely- Yeah.
It's all different.
We can,
Yeah.
and we
Right.
have to be really careful about this work, so let's do it this way.
Sure.
If there's
Yeah.
something that worked, then we need to look at tweaking, because
Absolutely.
everything can get better.
Well,
And when we're looking at the evaluation at the end of the district, we have some things that we have to work to get better.
look, we've got, like you said, we have a different skill set now.
Yeah,
Okay?
exactly.
We
That's
didn't have a
the good way to
principal on
put
the
it.
board. We didn't have somebody who was involved in writing curriculum. We didn't have any of that, okay? So we have different skill sets, so obviously that all that stuff has to get integrated. Those skills have to get integrated, so.
But we
Time to
all
go
have
home.
talent that we
Yes,
are.
yes.
Yeah, can we go
I'm
home?
sorry,
Is that what you said?
We
Can we
need
go
a-
home? Yes.
Motion for
Yes, we
adjourn.
need a,
Okay.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
I hope she's okay.